House of the Dragon is changing Rhaenyra Targaryen. Fans of Fire and Blood know her as the proud, headstrong, even entitled Realm's Delight. But in the series, we see a more sympathetic Rhaenyra, witty, self-aware, and driven by passion rather than ambition. It got us thinking, what if there are two versions of Rhaenyra? The way the book Rhaenyra and the show Rhaenyra. Are they truly different, or are we watching Rhaenyra through two different lenses? Let's take a look at Fire and Blood versus House of the Dragon, childhood, and the Realm's Delight. Fire and Blood leaves little doubt that Rhaenyra is Viserys' favorite child. He calls her his heir, not his son, when referring to her. And the book paints her as having a special bond with her father, one that eclipses even the love he has for his youngest son, Aegon. But House of the Dragon softens this, showing a genuine sibling bond between Rhaenyra and Aegon, and a loving relationship between Rhaenyra and her mother, Aemma Arryn. The show makes Rhaenyra more innocent, more playful, and emphasizes the pain of her father's death even more strongly than the book does. So in the show, Rhaenyra starts off more sheltered and innocent than her book counterpart, but arguably closer to her brother and family, marriage and scandal. Both versions of Rhaenyra marry seer Laenor Velaryon, but the circumstances differ. In Fire and Blood, Rhaenyra's marriage is a sham from the beginning, with her openly carrying children by Seer Harwin Strong. The book is unapologetic in its portrayal of her actions. While she is still called the Realm's Delight, she is also seen as childishly arrogant and reckless with her reputation. House of the Dragon, however, frames their marriage as progressive and equal, with both Rhaenyra and Lena wanting freedom within their relationship. The show also hints that Lena may be attracted to women, giving Rhaenyra's sons with Harwin a potential father as well. But regardless, the show clearly wants us to sympathize with Rhaenyra, seeing her as a victim of gossip and slander rather than a spoiled princess. Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. Viserys' naming of Rhaenyra as his heir is challenged almost immediately after he names her. At the Great Council of 101, many lords oppose a Queen Regnant, even though Viserys is still alive. In Fire and Blood, this doubt is still present when he passes away. After Aegon is crowned by Otto Hightower, despite being younger and in Dragonstone, Rhaenyra and her supporters declare her queen in the Riverlands and Stormlands. In response, Aegon is crowned in King's Landing and the Dance of the Dragons begins. House of the Dragon has streamlined this process and made Rhaenyra much more reluctant to engage in a war, suggesting that her claim was accepted by most of the Seven Kingdoms before Otto Hightower maneuvered Aegon II onto the throne. The show Rhaenyra is hesitant to take up arms, even cursing her own ambition. Book Rhaenyra would have none of this doubt. To her, the throne was hers by birthright, and anyone denying that would burn. The show has clearly softened her claim, making her more sympathetic and giving her a tragic dimension that the book lacks: the Dance of the Dragons and her downfall. Fire and Blood doesn't pull any punches with Queen Rhaenyra. She is depicted as bitter, vindictive, and willing to do whatever it takes to win the Game of Thrones, even executing prisoners in chains or feeding men to her dragons. House of the Dragon hasn't shown this side of Rhaenyra yet, but it's clear from trailers and Episode 8 that her story is going to end tragically, whether she is executed by her enemies or consumed by vengeance. Show Rhaenyra is unlikely to end up like her book counterpart, screaming as she is roasted alive inside King's Landing. So which version is right? Fire and Blood paints a picture of a proud, stubborn, somewhat entitled princess who loses sight of herself in the pursuit of power and glory. House of the Dragon seems to be depicting a more empathetic and compassionate Rhaenyra, a product of her environment and circumstance. Which version is right? Only time will tell. But it's important to remember that Fire and Blood was written from the perspective of a biased narrator who looks back on Rhaenyra with disdain. The book Rhaenyra is unreliable. She is judged harshly for her personality, ambitions, and the way she comports herself as a woman in a man's world. House of the Dragon seems to be correcting this bias. giving Rhaenyra more agency over her own story and painting her as a product of her upbringing rather than an inherently flawed person. Either way, Rhaenyra is one of the most complex figures in Westerosi history. Her story matters because it tells us as much about the world she lived in as it does about her.